All right. Well, I am here with someone that I love, appreciate very much, Dr. Nate Keiser up in Michigan. Now, exactly where are you in Michigan? I wish I had a map. I should have put a map.
No, you're walking around with one. So if you got a hand, you got your Michigan map, right?
Oh, there you go. There
you know, so no, we're kind of down in kind of southeast Michigan. Ann Arbor is the town that's closest by. That's where the University of Michigan's at.
Oh yeah, go blue.
Everybody should probably be a University of Michigan fan. Just
of course. I mean,
you know,
everyone used to ask me that when I was in college. Why are you a Michigan? I said, I don't know. I just love Michigan. It's just something about the helmets. I mean, come on. How can you not love the Wolverines? Well, you know, it's like, oh, I love that. Well, we're going to talk about some very interesting things, a little bit different today, because I've had an opportunity to be under Dr. Keiser's teaching and listen to the way he explains things. And I've actually watched him working with some clients. I had that opportunity as well. So it's been a great learning experience for me. But I told him I read something yesterday that reminded me of him, and it was perfect for today. That if you watch him on Instagram, and what is the tag there for Instagram?
Keiser.
Keiser. If you go and you watch him, you're going to find that he makes things elegantly simple. So we can take these very complex things about the brain, and he has this ability. Now he shouldn't be listening because his head's going to get bigger and it's going to feel
I'm going to be off the screen soon.
No, but he's going to be fine because he can take things and help communicate them. And something else I didn't tell you, Doc, is that I like this. I've watched so many of them that you communicate to people not just from here, but from here, right? So you've had, I know, some personal experience with health issues. And that has a way, personal suffering has a way of helping you to kind of connect with clients, right?
Yeah.
So, Dr. Keiser, good morning. Welcome.
Thank you. That's a great intro. And I love doing this conversation because I get to speak with you like heart to heart, and I don't get to do that so much anymore. So it's a beautiful thing. Thank you for having me.
We're going to jump right in. So I have a really interesting, I think, question that people really rarely get to understand, and I know you'll be able to make it elegantly simple. And that is, how do we generate our perception of reality, right? Human beings, we're walking around daily doing things, you with your 3 kids, me with my 3 grandkids. So how does a person, a human being, generate in their brain a perception of reality?
Whew. Going big right off the top.
I mean, I don't go like superficial, it's deep right away.
No, but it's such a big deal because like our perception is our reality, right?
Exactly.
It is. Yeah. That's all we have to tie us from, you know, this mind and this body to everything else that happens is our perception of it. I can tell you one thing that is very interesting is we all kind of tend to feel like our perceptions are like a surveillance video, like they're just running all the time and it's perfect and you can always just pop back and there it is laid out perfectly for you. But it's not quite that great, but it is pretty cool in the sense that it's more like we're interpreting things, and then it's almost like you've got one person that's in front of a bank of security cameras, and that person is just kind of interpreting what they're seeing and like picking out the highlights. It's like ESPN kind of like where you're picking out the highlights, and that's the stuff you remember is the way that you've interpreted it, and you can kind of go back and grab snippets and piece it together. And we know that even from looking at expert witness testimony and things like that in the courtroom. But thinking about perception, it's really how we're able to take all these different receptors for our sensory system, right? So all of them, you know, we think about our 5 senses, you know, touch, taste, smell, sight, what am I missing? Sound. But then we've also got, you know, things we can feel. We can feel the wind on our neck and the heat on our face. We can feel what we touch with our fingers, the softness of our skin or the roughness of paper. And we can feel the way we move our head and our vestibular system, which is super important in our work and in your work with, getting in the water and having some fun with dolphins. And those things are amazing. So it's the ability to take all those things that are happening at one time and to put them into one picture. Right. One beautiful picture of you, one beautiful picture of the world around you. And that helps us to create our reality. That's our perception.
I like it. So summarization, how do humans create the reality, their perception of reality, which is their reality, through their sensory receptor-based inputs, or their inputs, their vision, as you mentioned, all these different sensory systems. So, okay, that's really,
I add to that real quick, Mike.
yeah, of course, please.
So I think the thing that's super cool about that is you and I could experience the same day, but that perception is going to be augmented by the things that we have learned to pay attention to, right? So like if I'm a Michigan fan, like we talked about, I'm going to see things as I'm watching, as I'm watching sports throughout the day through the lens of someone who sees the world this way. If I'm a man, I may see the world through a completely different lens than if as a woman or whatever that looks like. So while those senses are coming in, the way that we interpret them is all shaded by our previous experiences, our genetics, the things we've learned, what we find important, what we pay attention to. So I think that's a super important part, especially in our world. I mean, you see people that are anxious or depressed, people that are suffering, and you realize like there's going to be a different interpretation of life looking through that lens.
Got it. I like that. And I would say that the augmentation or the lens that we interpret it from is, we can even say, is culture.
Sure, absolutely.
Male culture, female culture, American culture, Chinese culture, right? The culture, and this shapes the way we interpret things, and actually even the way we approach them. But I don't want to go too far down that. But you already touched on that, brain development, and this is, we're talking about brain health, general brain health, but these concepts, no one gets to sit down and talk with you that much, or with me in a limited way. But I'm hopeful that people will get something out of this and go, oh, that's interesting. I always wondered that, but now maybe we're giving them a little bit of a taste of it. But brain development, we know, is controlled by a combination of things: genetics, epigenetics, but also by the environmental stimuli that the brain receives. So when a brain is injured, the connectivity is damaged, we can say it in a number of different ways. Could we use the stimulus in the environment to start to bring back some function? How would you address that?
Yeah, and I think that's the way that we approach a lot of things, right? And these kind of receptor-based therapeutics, receptor-based activities, were built by our environment, right? So I like to think about this lens. We know that when we have children that aren't held as babies, right? Or if we're deprived of, if we experience sensory deprivation, it literally wires our brain differently.
Right.
Our brain requires the stimulus from these receptors in order to kind of wire in what we would call a normal way. Right. So then if we want to think about if we've got systems in the brain that are not firing well, they're abnormal in their structure or their function, a way that we can find in there is, can we rehabilitate them by using the sensors that would be tied to those areas in the brain, And I think that's brilliant. And I don't get to take credit for it because I think there were a lot of people that figured that out a long time ago, but it's just such a beautiful thing. And I think anybody that gets a chance to do it loves it. So it's great.
I agree. I like that. I like that thought. And, it's gone from localizing just areas of function in the brain to realizing, wait a minute, that's a little too reductionistic, although it's got some value, right? In the basic, you have to understand how these things neurodevelopmentally come together. But we want to have holistic is a little bit overused, but we use it for sake of completion. We have to have an integrated model of that, right? I mean, I see people, and I know you see people, and many of our colleagues and other professionals will see people, and if we don't apply an integrated model, we can miss things. I know that was a big turning point in learning under you, Dr. Carrick, and many others, that, let me expand my integrated model, my view of the brain's development, and then recovery and healing, right? So the integrated model.
I like that.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to mention, tell me what are your general brain health habits, things that you do to keep your brain healthy? Because I know you have an athletic background. A lot of people do.
Yeah.
Maybe you had some
my
impact.
Brain healthy? I think let's handle it from like a couple different perspectives, because I think there are like generalized brain things that are really good to do, which I think are great. But then there are also things that are specific to each of us that are probably more impactful for a lot of people. but it also takes some discovery to figure out what those are. So without that discovery, we could say some of the generalized things that we could look at are like from a physical perspective, movement of all varieties.
Yeah.
And of new varieties. I like the concepts that have kind of been forged by a guy, you might know him, Ido Portal, and he has developed a movement culture, and his concepts are around the ideas of isolating movements and then integrating movements, but then improvising movements. And I think that it's a beautiful thing because it's kind of what we do. So, you know, if you think about somebody with an injury, you're isolating, like, what is the most specific way that I can affect that injury? But then once that starts, we can kind of get that back going, start to heal, then we have to be able to integrate it with the rest of the patterns. If I hurt my wrist, for example, I can do wrist rehab, but eventually I got to get my elbow and my shoulder involved. But that has to turn into improvisation, where maybe I like to play basketball.
Right.
So this has to somehow convert into me being able to guard you and keep you from dunking on me.
I saw you with the stick one time working with that, right? You were doing different movements, and then I loved it. I loved how
the whole idea of finding ways where you're challenging your body, whether that's through a sport, whether that's through dance, whether that's through whatever the thing is you like to do. I like to rock climb. That's my thing.
Nice.
And then I think walking is vastly it's underutilized.
Yeah,
underutilized because it's kind of one of the foundations of our movement. It's what all of our movement structures are built upon. You know, and it's a teaching tool. If you're having pain while you're walking, then you know that there's something going on. But it's also the best way we know to stimulate cardiopulmonary activity. It stimulates our brain. It allows us to be creative, on and on and on and on. There's a great book you might want to read. It's called In Praise of Walking. It's a beautiful book.
Interesting.
I think if anybody's having a struggle, that's the place to start, is just thinking about how do I get on my feet more and spending time just walking as a starting.
My go-to in the past 2 years, even before the pandemic, was I do backward running.
Really?
Yeah, short, of course.
You get out on a football field though, so if you tip over, you're in the grass?
Very safe field, tight grass, and I do short intervals of sprints, and I found that is so remarkably helpful. And now I've integrated even more. People out there must think, who's this old guy doing this? But then I'll start going backwards, I'll turn, pivot, go backwards, like when you're a kid and playing sports. Turn the other way I've been able to grow to that. And I would say that it's helped my lower extremities, even my overall spine, feel much healthier and more mobile. Of course, I do yoga and things like that. So movement-based.
I believe that. That's a great tip. I like that a lot. That's really good.
Backward walking, backward jogging, but you got to be safe in what kind of ground you're on. But I'm quite careful about that. I just love that feeling of movement, as you're saying. So what else? General brain. So
that's kind of from a physical perspective. If we're going to think about like a mental, emotional perspective for your brain, man, stress will beat you up.
Yeah.
There's no two ways around it. And we all have it at different stages and different seasons in our lives and at different levels. But, stress mitigation tools are really helpful, and those can be different. Those can be breathing exercises. They can be talking to somebody. They can be just spending time, in your own thoughts, or, praying, or whatever the thing is that you do.
Right.
For me, I am very fortunate where I live and work. There are only it's like 0.8 miles of separation between the two. So I walk to work every day. You'll see today it's like 5 degrees outside and it snowed this morning.
Nice.
But I walk in that moment of just being outside and being able to think and being able to just be thankful. Those are things I really spend a lot of time on because I think they benefit that stress component. And then when I leave at the end of the day, I get that nice buffer. Yep. To be able to go home and to be able to kind of recharge with my family. So that's my, whatever that is for you for stress management. I'm sure you've got a good tip on that one.
Yeah, stress management. We do a lot of breathing. I brought that into the practice with people, and we do that before we do neurofeedback. So I have them do, and they progress. It's a progression: 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, up to a control type of breathing. Yeah. I know that you did some military training with shooting and things, and you worked on breath control. And So we use a lot of that before the neurofeedback, because I don't take time to breathe properly. So that's a huge one for us there. But also I agree, is you got to getting outside, stress reduction. I did an interview with a gal, a mental health counselor, runs a center here that's just brilliant, the way they work with all the people in their crew. But she said that she quoted someone in some statistics, and I can't give you the exact quote, but the pandemic should end in terms generally within the next year in terms of the levels of issues physically. But the mental health costs will take 4 years, they're estimating, to return to normal. So when you talk about stress, everyone's had the burner turned up in their life on some level. I've seen it with my parents. I've seen it with other older clients. I've seen it with kids, parents saying, I don't know why they're having such a problem. And I said, well, everyone deals with the stress a little bit differently. So yes, you gotta have methods of stress reduction. That'll definitely take a toll on the brain.
And sometimes we don't even know we're in stress.
No,
that's what happened to me earlier on in my life, where everything was great, but it was so great there were too many things in there, too many things in the pot, and people tell you you're stressed, you're like, I'm doing great, I'm fine, but then you realize, like, I'm doing way too many things, and even though it's eustress, it's like things that we perceive as positive, sometimes it's just like taking time to just be still. And
every time when our kids were younger, I had the same thing. We would go on vacation. You'll relate to this. We'd go on vacation, and so Saturday, Sunday, Monday on vacation when children were little, I would be like, okay, let's get going. Here we go, 7 o'clock, let's go. Like, what is going? But I was so entrained to this 7 a.m. Monday morning. Let's go. Let's get. It took me like 3 or 4 days to realize, wow, I gotta chill. So it took me 3 or 4 days to get into the vacation of calming myself. But that was always something we would laugh about later and say, remember when you were like that? Like, man, oh man, doing too many things.
That's the truth, man. It's tough to do, but it's when you're excited about something, it's also a good thing. So,
yeah, I have to temper that. My wife is the perfect, she's the element that tempers that for me. Like, all right, honey. I'm like the horse getting out of the barn. She's like, whoa, slow it down a little bit.
We got to have them. It's a good thing to have a good partner in your life.
All right.
And then I think the third thing that I would talk about would be just how you feed yourself. It's a super common, you experience this, I experience this, that when the wheels start to fall off and we have problems with our health, most of us start looking at what we're putting in as like a first line of defense. Like, that's the thing that we can control. Right. It's very intimate to us. It's a way that we can change right now, right? It's a thing that we can do in the moment to change. And I think that that's very useful. I hesitate to give dietary advice just because it can be so different for different people. And then you have different cultural components and different, beliefs and things like that will shade how people eat. But I think there's a way, a lot of times there's a lot of the kind of fear that's associated with food once you start diving into that world. Like, if I start, okay, I can't eat this because it's going to make me sick, or I can't eat that, or I can't, and there becomes like this level of anxiety that comes with that. But I think it's also helpful to remember, if we look at just like a plant-based diet versus a meat diet, right? In vogue right now, we have both. We have a vegan diet, we have a carnivore diet that are both very interesting to people at this moment. Right. I think the cool thing to remember is that as humans, we can survive and have survived to be able to eat all of it. That's one of the things that makes us great, is that we have that survivability to, no matter what environment we are in, we have the capacity to do all of them. So I think it's a win for us as a whole. But I do think there are times when we have to eat in different ways in order to serve the way we feel at that moment. Like when I have the flu, I can't eat a steak. And that's just the way it is. Like, feel like I'm gonna throw up. But when I'm feeling strong and healthy, I want a steak. That's just the nature of the beast. So I think that, that those things exist, eating whole foods, trying to limit, I don't want to be the one to give dietary advice, but just
I agree.
Whole foods, good things, things people would have eaten 200 years ago.
Right.
Whole foods. Do that. Don't eat too much. If you need to create a rule around eating, create a rule. That's what we have, all sorts of them. People write a lot of books and get real famous making rules around eating. But I think having an orientation where it's not a fearful thing, it's an empowering thing, is that I can do any of this or all of it, or I can take it or leave it. And I have the gift to be able to do that.
I love it. See, elegantly simple. I couldn't be more in agreement with that after 31 and a half years in practice, seeing all kinds of different eating styles and approaches, and the shift of, going from, like you said, one side to the, you got to find, and it shifts, it changes. I love how you said that, because it does. We were vegetarians for 7 years when our kids were growing up. Sure. And then we moved into a little different, but still we never have really departed very far from eating, I would say about 80%, whole foods most of the time, and you learn, you go through the process, but not having the fear like another stressor. You don't need another stressor.
That's, I think, the biggest thing we're at right now is, I see it, I'm sure you see it, where people just, they'll get more worked up about how to solve that problem than any of the foods actually giving them from a dietary perspective, any of the problems that it's giving them. So I think that's just a useful orientation, is to just be excited about what you do get to eat, and that you don't have to starve, and that, we have all this nutrition available, and we really get to pick. We're in a place right now in time where we don't have to sit in a bread line, and we don't have to wait on government cheese for a lot of people. Even people that, don't have some of the advantages still have the ability to go to a grocery store and shop. So it's,
Hey, do you cook?
Oh, I love to cook.
Oh, see, I knew there was another thing that binds us together. I love to cook too. Tell me one thing you love to cook lately, recently.
What have I gotten into lately? Okay, so it's not a healthy food. Well, it's kind of a healthy food. I saw Gordon Ramsay make his version. He's got a new burger place, a couple years old, and how they do their burger, and it is amazing. They use like this 80-20 chuck, and it's grass fed, and it's, the way you make the patty and the way, it's just amazing. So that's grilling that burger. My family's probably getting tired of it, because I'm a little bit obsessive. So once I want to do something, I want to do it perfectly. And
right. Do it again. All right. So here's the one I've been doing lately. It's going to sound super healthy, but the reason I'm doing it is more for my wife, because she is gluten-free. So I've made it both with gluten and without, but I've been making a cauliflower crust, white truffle sauce, mozzarella pizza with shiitake mushrooms I put on it. And then when it's finished, you hit it with truffle oil.
Yeah. Do you do that in the oven? Do you have a pizza oven specifically?
I've done both. I've done it. I have a smoker grill that I turn up to 500, and I've done it in the oven. It's brilliant. It's so good. Either way, cauliflower crust, which is, very healthy, or I did it with a regular dough that we made. Oh my goodness, it's so delicious. So anyway.
That sounds really good. If you want to get into some healthier recipes, my wife on Instagram, that's like her thing, is she posts the healthy stuff that we do. And
all right, I love that.
Burger.
All right, let's just hit this one thing. We'll pause for a second here. Tell me just a little bit about new ways of treating or considering post-concussion syndrome and treating it.
So when you say new,
go ahead.
How new do you mean?
Like the new ways that we look at treating post-concussion syndrome.
Yeah, post-concussion syndrome, it's a big deal, and we've come a long way in just even traditional understanding of it, which I don't want to discredit. But when we think about concussion, I think about, and I think the people that we train with think about kind of focal developments, but how that turns into capacity. I like to talk about it through the term of functional capacity, which is basically like, what are we capable of? When I move my eyes, can I look at something and hold them there? I should be capable of that, right? No one would argue that. I should be capable of doing these kind of simple functions. I should be capable of having normal reflexes and the ability to stand and hold my balance, or to be able to walk without any weird things going on. So these are all capacities that we have. And when you break them all out and we look at, capacities, what your eyes can do, what can your inner ear do? Am I having problems with my neck? Do I feel my body the way we talked about with perception? Am I able to move in patterns that are normal, or do they have problems with the way that I move?
Right.
All of these things point us in the direction of where we have a diminished level of capacity.
Right. Okay.
And so if we kind of use that as the outline and say, when we think about concussion, or if we think about anything where we would challenge the way the brain functions in a way, then it gives us the ability to say, where's the diminished function? Like, can we see, like, man, go back to the eye example, if I can't hold my eyes over there and they're bouncing like this, that bouncing means something. That bouncing tells me about where something's failing in the brain. And then we can say, okay, can we improve that capacity? And because we have this receptor-based system, because we have the ability to learn and to change our brain through the way we interact with our environment, it really opens the door to be able to say, okay, well, let's retrain that thing. Let's work on, can we provide a dosage of stimulation that allows you to be able to hold your eyes still? And then can we do that to the point where you can hold it still for a minute? Can you do that to where you can move your head and hold them still? And then now we've integrated this into like a whole person. And when we see those segmented capacities change, we see this beautiful thing of how it improves our holism, our ability to function as a whole. And that's really what we're all after. That's the mission that you and I are on. That's the mission that our patients expect us to be on, is not to give them perfect blood work and not to give them perfect blood pressure. Our job is to get them to a capacity where they can live the life they're trying to live again, in a way that they can enjoy. So while yes, we want to be regimented and have numerical data and be objective, stepping outside of that and saying, well, how do we make this work better? And that orientation, I think, is the thing that makes people that use functional neurology or chiropractic neurology, that orientation, I think, is what makes it different, because it prevents you from saying, I have this algorithm, let's try it on you, maybe it'll work. Right. Instead saying, like, this is the problem, let's try to solve that problem, and let's keep solving and keep solving and keep solving until we get to the point where it has an effect of giving you a better version of your life to live. And I think that that's something that people can get behind. And to me, it's a life worth living, in a mission worth tackling.
That's very well said. It reminds me a little bit, two things. It reminds me of that movie, The Martian, with Matt Damon, when he said, you got to solve the problem, solve the next problem, solve the next problem to survive. So I appreciate that very much. And for me, the way I kind of consider it is, I keep asking myself, not to the patient, but why? Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? And I keep searching for what's behind the what behind the why. My wife says that. Why can't they do this? What? So that, I love the way you kind of put that together. And then secondly, I know you're a fan of neurologic history and some of the great physicians. So who is the one it's attributed to that said, basically, I'm gonna kind of chop it up here, paraphrasing it. Don't give me the physician that can diagnose everything. Give me the physician who can put me back together. Is it Charcot?
Yeah. So you think, this a paraphrase of Charcot, and that's the beautiful thing, is that's what he was brilliant at. And anybody who's interested in that could talk for days. Go talk to Dr. Carrick. Talk for years. But the idea that we can't help what we can't see. We don't know what to see if we don't know what to ask about or what to look for, right? So this is the thing, is being able to observe, but also knowing what to observe, but also not being limited by what you know how to observe. You know, the only way you know how to step outside and grow this is to ask the questions, and then that sends you down, another line of thinking. Even just yesterday, I got down a huge rabbit hole. We're starting to do some pulmonary function testing, thinking about people with dysautonomias, and spend a couple hours in that rabbit hole. And but it's so applicable, because now we get to apply that in a way that is integrated. You don't have to just do it in a pulmonary clinic. We want to think about, your cardiopulmonary system is only separated by 2 centimeters of tubing. I mean, that's it. It's the same, and it's all connected. So
integrated model. Yeah. It's so integrated, and you probably better than most with what you experience. And maybe that'll be the subject for the next time we get together. All right, so I'm gonna let you go back to taking care of all the people and things in your life there. I appreciate your time. Hopefully everyone got a little snippet and experience with Dr. Keiser. And so we'll look forward to talking again. Thanks so much, Doc.
Thanks so much. I had so much fun with you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
it's always great.
Good to see you, buddy.